Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Andrea Piero, and I'm the director of the Visiting Artists Program at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I'm delighted to welcome you to our first public program of the fall season, featuring objects of common interest in Lott Office for Architecture. This program is presented in partnership with the William Bronson and Grayce Slovet Mitchell Lecture Series in SAIC's Department of Architecture, Interior Architecture, and Design Objects, as well as the Chicago Architecture Biennial. Objects of common interest in Lott Office for Architecture are participants in the 6th edition of the Chicago Architecture Biennial titled Shift, Architecture in Times of Radical Change, which opened this past Friday. The biennial offers a dynamic lineup of exhibitions, installations, performances, and conversations that will unfold across the city through February 2026. Each year, SAIC's Visiting Artists Program hosts public talks by internationally recognized artists, designers, and scholars to expand our thinking about contemporary art and culture. Alongside these programs, visiting artists meet with students through discussions, studio visits, and critiques, providing unique and highly valued opportunities for which we are grateful to our visiting artists. Before we begin, just a few quick notes. Please silence your cell phones and note that video recording of the lecture is not permitted. Following the presentation, we'll have time for 3 or 4 questions from the audience before we conclude at 7:30. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand and our staff will bring you a microphone. We ask that questions be brief so we can hear from as many of you as possible. So thank you again for joining us tonight. I'm now pleased to welcome to the podium Tristan Stirk, Chair of Architecture and Interior Architecture at SAIC, to introduce Leonidas Trampoukis of Objects of Common Interest in Lott Office for Architecture. Thank you.
Well, hello. Hi. It's a true pleasure to be here tonight with all of you, so thank you very much for coming. And I'm delighted to introduce our speaker. But if you permit me just a moment, I'd like to give you a little bit of background. My name is Tristan Stirk, and I'm currently the chair of Architecture and Interior Architecture at the school. The department was founded 83 years ago in 1941 as a revolutionary department dedicated to reinventing architecture, rethinking interior architecture, and pushing design education forward. A woman founded it. She was an immigrant and the first woman architect working for Frank Lloyd Wright. She was a revolutionary, and her name was Maria Lillian. The department she founded became a hotbed for the discipline at a time when Chicago was the global center for architectural thought. The department was a success. It grew and it became a place where performers, graphic designers, architects, and interior architects worked together to make wild things. I hope that gives you goosebumps. Films, performances, interiors, buildings, and it's within the spirit of innovation and transdisciplinary experimentation that we welcome tonight's guest. Founded by Eleni, and you're going to have to forgive my pronunciation of your names. I grew up in Australia and we butcher names. Founded by Eleni Petaloti and Leonidas Trampoukis in 2016, the offices of Objects of Common Interest, and Lott Office for Architecture engage at the intersection of art, design, and architecture. The work we'll see tonight bridges the contrasting influences of Greece and New York, blending cultural narratives into work ranging from sculptural installations to objects and experimental environments. A long list of museums, institutions, and galleries from around the world, Brussels, Hamburg, Quebec, Milan, Copenhagen, to name a few, have shown their work. Their work is on view as a part of the 6th edition of the Chicago Architecture Biennial, Shift, Architecture in Times of Radical Change from September 19 to February 28, and we are delighted to have Leonidas here tonight. Let's welcome him.
Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm happy to be here to present the work. Lot and Object of Common Interest is a big interdisciplinary team. We're based in New York and in Athens, Greece. I'm the founder together with my partner, Eleni Petaloti. The reason why we have two practices is because architecture and other disciplines work in different speeds. And we first we studied architecture, and we were purist architects of wanting to do only architecture, but soon we realized that our interest lies further away from that. And we founded Object of Common Interest a little bit later on our professional career for doing exactly this, being vague and being abstract in creating things that are around the discipline of architecture, but not architecture itself. We have a studio in Athens and a studio in New York, and recently we have founded a fabrication facility in Athens where we produce and cast pieces out of resin through traditional techniques and digital techniques. I have created this presentation to illustrate the variety of projects we work, and they're mixed. We are a team of architects, designers, curators, that we all work at the same projects. We don't have an architecture team, and we don't have a design team. We're all the same people doing all different things, most of the times in parallel. So this presentation is laid out in a sense that illustrates this as a feeling. I call it a static performance. The reason for that is lecture after lecture or a presentation after presentation, we realize what we're doing slowly. We don't have a fixed vision of this is what we're doing and we're doing it in that way. We are open in reinterpreting ourselves all the time and thus learning from our works. I've structured this presentation through certain keywords that are important in our work, not as pure as guidelines. And these terms are always in the back of our head as we design projects, and sometimes we focus on one, sometimes we focus on others, sometimes they're just there for us to be guided. Gathering. One of the first projects that kicked off our interest in this field around architecture is a competition that we won at organized by the Van Allen Institute in New York and the Flatiron District. We called it Skyline. It was a temporary installation in the middle of Manhattan where we were invited to create an attraction that would stay there for a few months. We decided to, instead of doing something that was static, something that was there to see, we wanted to create interaction. We wanted to create a place where there would be gathering, a gathering but in an informal way. We fabricated a series of thin steel elements that form a shape and form a space. And there is space around it and a space within it. And we hanged hammocks for people to be able to experience this in time. It's very important for all the projects that we think and further working on. Time is a very important element as things are experienced over time in order to understand and in order to evaluate what a project does to its surroundings. This project was actually fabricated here in Chicago and shipped to New York in many pieces, and then dismantled and traveled around to certain other museums and locations as a public art installation. We have been working with several brands that we are defining their strategy of how they expand. This is a Colombian roastery called Devoción in New York with a few locations where we created for them a strategy of how they will expand not only their architectural aesthetics, but mostly their way of presenting their brand, which for us was around gathering. It was around the informality of the Colombian landscape, of how street living and how people sit informally and create random conversations. This idea of randomness is something that we also have in our culture. We come from Greece in a very outdoor environment, and coming to New York and blending our two kind of backgrounds gives us this back and forth dual identity of that we want to bring into our projects. Therefore, a lot of our projects have this reference of our background, our way of living, and living in Greece, living in the Mediterranean culture. So for this brand, we created these lush gardens, and this is one of the locations. We decided 3 or 4 other locations where greenery is an important element of the brand and how people sit around and experience this interior space. We have been presenting at works almost every year in the past 4 or 5 years at the Milan International Design Fair. And we were invited at this platform called Alcova. It's a platform that situates and sets international shows in the middle of the city. We were invited to, we had a carte blanche to create whatever we wanted at the fairgrounds. We wanted to create a piece that reminiscence of these European places of meeting points, the fountain. The fountain is something very culturally significant in Europe, where it's not just a point of reference, not just an attraction, something to see, but also something to create space around it. But this was a temporary fair. So we created this inflatable structure, something that could be packed in a bag and be brought in place, inflated, pump water from the tap, and create momentarily a plaza for a week that would then be dismantled and move and disappear. The idea of temporary installations is something that we started realizing slowly that is a ground for experimentation. And it's temporary things that are the kind of like starting points for larger ideas as we build up our vocabulary of architectural language. At Bergamo in Italy was the cultural capital of Italy 2 years ago, and we were invited to participate in a competition that we won to create a landmark temporary structure. It was located on an abandoned, almost abandoned plaza, a very historically significant plaza that was never used, and we wanted to bring in an element of activation. So activating through temporary installations is something that is also part of our vocabulary and language, and we start developing different scenarios of working to achieve attraction, but at the same time give significance to the space, rooted in context and rooted in the culture. We created this, and this is acrylic tubes that are built around that are built around custom bent with molds that are built around a steel structure that is supporting this in this height. And not only that, we created a series of seating installations from various different materials in the plaza to activate it and create a stage that is a stage for the community. This system of lighting tubes, we call them tube lights, has become slowly for us a language of expression. This is a permanent installation as part of the collection of Maxi Museum in Rome. And we further start implementing it in projects that we create a dialogue between the existing and the new, again, always for temporary installation. This is at the Athens Film Festival scale. we have 2 young children, 3 and 7, and it's very often that we reference to them and to reference to the way children experience space in our projects, not only for at the concept stage, but also realizing what we've done later on. Because the children, most of the times, have this intuitive approach to how they experience something. And this is something that we learn from. This is a project for a gallery in Athens, where we were invited to create a series of unique pieces. And we developed these wood structures that are seemingly light, but they're very heavy, and they feel like they're soft, but at the same time they're very hard, creating this illusion of texture, an illusion that they're not objects to sit on, but in reality they are. So when we did this installation and this exhibition, it was the children first that started approaching the pieces, touching them, sitting, giving the hint to everyone that these are not things to be detached from. Everything that we do, we like to be experienced, we like to be touched, we like to be referenced, and not only to look from a distance. We started working with inflatables in this project as a reference to a brief that we received from a Brussels Design Museum to create an installation. We wanted to bring in our Greek heritage and a Greek reference to a space where it's traditionally presents usable and utilitarian design. We created an installation from inflatable sculptures that are referencing Cycladic. These Cycladic figurines are tiny, small marble artifacts that are the starting point of our civilization. They are one of the most important artifacts in the Greek civilization. And we wanted to create this dialogue between, and an illusion between the small stone sculptures, scale them up and make them lightweight, make them pliable, make them movable. So during this installation, people were able to go around and walk around and starting touching it. So the sculpture started moving. So they started having a conversation with the people, a conversation with the guests. So in a sense becomes a performance, and rather than an object to see, a museum piece not to touch. We were later invited from Hamburg Design Museum to create a pandemic show. This was a brief to address issues that everybody was experiencing at that time. We called it Tea House for Domesticity. We designed these 3 inflatable pavilions where 2 people at a time could go in and interact with no touching. But at the same time, they could be seen from outside. The show was curated by curator Maria Cristina Dideiro, and it was the duration was about 2 months during the pandemic. This is a presentation for the Design Awards of the German Design Council in Milan, where we getting experience from all these various projects, and we almost never repeat one project into variations. Every project is an incentive to think of something new and experiment further, sometimes in the medium of the material, sometimes in the idea of the concept, sometimes in the core idea. Here we wanted to create the sense of intimacy in an exhibition space that had not any particular spatial configuration. We created this cabinet of curiosity squeezed in a corner of this exhibition, allowing much more space around it for group meetings and events. The inflatable here becomes a space. It creates a compression and creates intimacy, and one person at a time was able to go in and see the exhibition, thus connecting with the objects in a very different way than a regular exhibition where everybody's strolling around and seeing various things. And closure. Coming from a Greek culture, we have been obsessed with the idea of inside and outside, how the boundaries blur, and how the experience of a place when these boundaries kind of are dissolved intensifies the emotions, intensifies the way we actually live in a space. And this comes more in architecture, but further on we have developed these ideas in the smaller scale as well. This was one of the first projects we worked on in architecture, actually, right after when we started working. It was for a project for an art collector in Greece called Dakis Ioannou, one of the major art collectors. It's a beach club where we took this traditional idea of the shaded canopy, the simple bamboo canopy that provides simple shade and simple idea of enclosure, but we scaled it up. We made a huge canopy out of that is housing the program underneath. A restaurant, a bar, a children area, a gallery, all in open plane under one single roof. And these perforated curtains will slide and be able to adjust and create new variations and new layouts. We started realizing that we're not into fixation. We're not into things that are this exactly thing that we designed and you have to read it in that specific way. We want we are promoting flexibility, but not flexibility in terms of usage, but flexibility in terms of experience space. Interpretations of the user, interpretations of the viewer. This is a pavilion at Art Athena Art Fair in Greece. Art Athena has been a platform where we have been working in the past, again like Alcova, many years, giving us a carte blanche to create something that for us is an experiment. Art Athena traditionally in Greece is an art fair. They show sculptures and paintings. So we wanted to create an entrance pavilion where it's for the first time it's an installation. It's something. It was many years ago where these kind of things were not really visible in Greece. We created this modular steel structure out of painted metal and acrylic panels where people will be able to go inside and mingle. And again, this concept of inside out and the boundary are, you feel you are within a space, but then you're outside in exterior space. This is a tower concept and that we're working in at the moment. It's a mid-rise structure that is basically elevated, stacked exterior and interior spaces alternated. We are experimenting with this concept of bringing the outdoor in multiple levels. So it is gardens in space, in the sky, that are connecting seamlessly to the interior space. So life becomes priority around the perimeter of the interior rather than the inside. We're working on several residential projects in Greek islands, but I will show one particular, which is it has no context, and the importance for that is it's in the fields around wheat fields. We wanted to create this sense of urbanity and sense of belonging and sense of activation of a space. We created a square within a square within a square. So it is a patio within a building within a courtyard, and the concept of the walls is that of creating a sense of boundary, but not a strict boundary. The walls are there to dictate the borders between the built and the unbuilt, the nature and artifice, thus making the building almost like an object. And this is an interest that we have been developing in architecture through working in parallel between these various different scales, in our minds, we start blending what is an object and what is a building, and somehow these notions are being a little bit interweaved. Abstraction is it is another term that we have been using. And what is abstraction for us? It is the idea of simplicity, not in the sense of minimalism, not adding detail, but the erasure of detail. Erasing detail and sticking to a significant core concept that becomes a simple idea that at the end it's being realized in its purity as close as possible to the original conception. Whether this is an object or whether this is a building, we get this driving kind of like a guideline of abstraction to be able to create something that is more conceptual rather than elaborate. This is a residential townhouse in Brooklyn, in a neighborhood where it's for an artist, where we wanted to create inclusion through contrast. And the idea of this bold color is what we see as transforming this building into an object. That is, it was always there. This is a renovation. This is not new building, but it's a method for creating significance out of something ordinary. A student housing residence in Greece, which again, and I'm not going deeper into the details of the floor plans, and I want to present these buildings and these ideas as core concepts and how we combine these thoughts between objects and architecture. This is in a historic district in northern Greece, where we're taking traditional elements of these protruded boxes that used to be architectural elements but then present them in an abstract and sculptural way. Thus, we're trying to blend in through contrast. This is a pavilion in Chinatown in New York. It is a response to an open brief competition to create a gathering point in the middle of the dense neighborhood for a signaling tower, but at the same time a gathering spot for the area and an information spot. We worked together with United Visual Artists from London, a lighting artist group, where we wanted to create this abstract canopy made of reinforced concrete, lightly hovering over the ground, creating a park underneath, which is a landscape. There is no particular use, and this ambiguity of use is something that we are attracted to, of creating space that has sometimes no reason to exist, and then it's the uses and the people and its activation that will bring eventually life into these projects. With the term atmosphere, we see feelings, and we see elements that are not an atmosphere of an interior space. We're not so much interested in how a space feels, but we're interested in how we can create feelings out of an experience of a space. We have developed in our studio this material called opal. This is a cast resin, and it has this magical element of being uncontrolled. We don't control. There is a color change, there is a hue change, and in the process of casting, we don't control the outcome. So this idea of letting go and not expecting that everything has to be properly designed is something that we tend to like in terms of both in object design and in architecture. We believe in developing our thoughts through project, and seeing the object finalized. It's when we also understand what we have achieved through these concepts. This is one of our first show we did using when we launched our fabrication studio for resin. It was for Nilufar Gallery in Milan, where we developed this series of objects, a monochromatic exhibition from this opalescent resin material, where the light, whenever the light changes and passes through, it creates these different hues and different magical shadows. Many of these terms you just saw, ambiguity, are interconnected. So with ambiguity, we claim, we promote, let's say, we think that we don't want to be the ones dictating all the use and dictating all the way one object should be designed. This sometimes it translates in flexibility. This is a project for a chamber gallery in Buenos Aires, where we developed this system of planes and tubes that are brought together with magnets, and they can be snapped around and reconfigured in very different orientations to create many infinite possibilities of objects. It can be shelves, it can be tables, it can be coffee tables, or sculptural elements. And these are further evolutions of these ideas that somehow they start being mixed all together. The tube lights with the idea of the magnets and the idea of the ambiguity of things not really being glued together but being assembled. We like the illusion of something that feels that it's fixed and at the same time it's not. Something that feels very light but it's actually not light, it's heavy, or the opposite. This illusion of materiality that creates in a tangible approach, it creates something that is not expected. This is a restaurant design in Athens, where we created all the elements, the interior design, art curation, and custom pieces. It is a very tiny space that we custom designed these chairs that are stainless steel, very heavy chairs with a custom resin gel, which is soft. So when you're trying to move this chair, it's something very heavy. You feel it's very uncomfortable, but then you sit in this tiny cushion that suddenly you experience that this is something that over time it's gentle for you. So we want this idea of ambiguity comes into this tangibility and materiality also in interior space. We were more interested in this restaurant design of these tiny gestures that create these surprises rather than the image and the kind of like the photographic image of the restaurant. Often we reference to things from our past, not only for memory, not for us remembering our memories, but also for creating new memories. Eleni had this idea of, this is a project, a collection for Italian brand Tacchini. It's a traditional, it's historic Italian group of furniture. And Eleni had this idea of getting this. She had an ashtray from her grandmother, this thing that she used to see in her living room when she was growing up. That eventually, at some point through this project, it came up, and she thought about recreating this memory into a series of objects. We used cast resin to create these faceted pieces, vases and mirrors. That each one in various different colors. So this is although it's an industrial project, it's a project for a brand. For us, it's something very, very personal. It's something that roots back to our childhood years. So this is how our methodology of working is not necessarily linear, and this is also presented here in a very kind of informal way. we may be working at some point in this project, and then a building, and then an installation, and at the same time, and be able and try to manage, not intentionally, to do something completely different in the three different scales. This is our crazy project in Greece. This is our fabrication facility. We had this opportunity a few years ago. We were working with a fabricator in New York, in Long Island City, who was one of the first people working in resin. He was the only fabricator producing the touristic things, Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building, but at the same time he was fabricating resin pieces for famous artists. So at some point he had this idea he wanted to close his business, and Eleni comes home one day and said, I have an idea, Ovidio told us he will gift us all his workshop because he doesn't want his company to be dissolved. So overnight, we decided to do it, and he packed for us all his studio, large container crates. We shipped two shipping containers to Athens, and we set up this 1,000 square feet fabrication space where it's purely for casting resin. Ovidio, this Romanian artist, he taught us how to make traditional molds, mold techniques. But then later on, we have developed it into a studio of 6 full-time people that we produce our own work and work for other artists. And we work with traditional molds, but at the same time, digital techniques. And here we have the option and the opportunity to really experiment and really play around with a material that is at the same time so tangible, but very hard to work on. We started working with galleries, and for producing one-off pieces and being part of art shows. This is our first collaboration with an Athens-based gallery called Breeder, and we take corrugated sheets from the street, and we mold it into molds, and we cast the resin. And then the mold is, when we detach the mold, then it's garbage. So these are necessarily one-off pieces because the way we use the mold is something that we can never use again. And we have continuing this collection. It's not a collection. It's an ongoing exploration of we call it Athens landscape. Corrugated. We rip off corrugated pieces from fences. We find on the street, and we hands-on improvise in these forms. Completely purely improvisation, no design, no sketching. We go directly from the material to the final object. And this is something that is also in our DNA. We almost never do mock-ups, although I think this sounds a little bit contrary to art schools and design schools. We follow our intuition and go directly from my ideas to fabrication, and in a sense allowing mistakes and allowing learning from one project towards the other. During COVID, we had one of our most important to date exhibitions at the Noguchi Museum in New York. We published a book about Isamu Noguchi and Greece. During COVID, we were researching the museum archives, and we found that the artist was going to Greece long time in the 50s and 60s to source marble, primarily for his sculptures. But then he befriended a lot of artists of the era, and he kept going back and back for friendships. So the museum director and curators invited us to continue to advance this research, and we published a book called Noguchi in Greece, Greece in Noguchi. So through these conversations, we started talking about having a show at the museum. At that time, the museum curator were open to invite artists and designers to create shows that are not about them, but it's about a conversation, a dialogue with the artist. We proposed crazy ideas, some large inflatable environments where we wanted to take out completely all the sculptures of Noguchi. Anyway, long story short, they disappeared for a few months, and then suddenly in May we received an email with a curated full curation, a title, opening dates, and a curation, a selection of curated pieces from things that we have already done. Nothing from this exhibition was produced for the show. To open a few months after. So this was the first time we actually saw someone else selecting our works and putting them together in such an interdisciplinary show. And for the first time, we realized what we have been doing, because all this time our work was about random ideas that we brought together through these abstract terms. This is one of Isamu's work called Practice Stones in Placement, where he had his apprentices. Basically, this was the apprentices' practice stones for like stone cutting. And we had a piece of our own, the one you see on the left, that it was a mistake. We had cast a piece of this opalescent resin piece, and it came out a mistake, so we chiseled it and we make it a stone. So without even knowing, that was a year ago before even this show. So the curators somehow studied all this work of ours and matched it with Isamu's work to create this dialogue. And this has affected us through then in very different ways of how we see our work and how we see our different types of work being together under the influence of one mindset. This is a project we initiated. Many times we have commissions, but most of the times our interest lies in initiating ideas that we will take them through no matter if there is a client or not, and then they will find ways to get somewhere. We brought together 9 of the biggest marble makers in Greece for the first time to present the Greek marble in an international show in Milan. These were all marble quarries that have been used to working in trade shows, so they were not really used to something artistic. They could not understand what the benefit of this was. So we created this series of sculptural elements rotating. So each of the company created one totem, and we presented it at the salon in Milan. Not only highlighting a material that Greece is known for, but for almost creating not teaching, advising these companies that there is an artistic practice and artistic initiatives like that are important not only for designers, but are also for not for them as companies, but also for promoting ideas and promoting culture. Lastly, I think that's the last term that actually is the one of this started, play. This is the first project that we worked as objects of common interest. It is the Design Talks Theater at the Design Miami in Miami, where they called us to design a temporary auditorium for the art fair. Up until that time, all the auditoriums were designed with seating and chairs and standard things. So we thought that, first of all, there was no time to design something quickly, something formal. So it was the first time that we thought about objects placement in space. That objects have the power to create space when they come together and they are variations and clusters. We designed these cushiony, lightweight elements, simple shapes, squares, arches, round. These are actually Pilates balls, the round ones. We clad the theater space with mirrors to create intimacy, to create an environment. And people were able to move these things around as they talk. So now we are maybe 50 people here. Sometimes there were talks for 200. Sometimes there were talks with 30 people. So the space never looked empty. People were moving things around, and they're creating like small communities in the corners. And this was the first project that we started working with objects in space. This was, again, in Art Athena, where we were invited to design, not to design, to make a placement in front of this, one of the most important Bauhaus buildings in Athens. And then we created these floating objects, very heavy. They look very light, but they're heavy out of plumbing plumbing tubes that people didn't really. They were supposed to be. It was supposed to be a sitting installation. People were supposed to sit on them at the entrance of the fair, but nobody was sitting because it was an art fair. Until the children came in, and they started jumping around, crawling under, and they started giving the point to everyone. Okay, this is something we can use. And this again was one of our first early projects that we started understanding the power of play and the power of informality, actually. This is a fashion brand called Nili Lotan. It's a New Yorker clothing brand that we have been developing their strategy of expanding their stores, seeing it as galleries with objects, and seeing their clothes and their as artifacts as well. Very simple spaces where we populate with our designs, other designers as well. We create galleries, so with objects, and the clothes are objects as well. You saw this earlier at the exhibition at the Noguchi Museum. We were invited by Kvadrat, this Danish company of fabrics, to present, to be part of a group show in Copenhagen, where they would give us any amount of fabric we would ask for to create something. But the brief was do something we've never done before in an artistic way, but not promote their material, but experiment with their fabrics. We tapped into, again, our Greek heritage and we call these Doric columns. We created these columns where every compartment was clad with fabric, but then we put all of these in motors. So all of the compartments were spinning in different directions. So the way of stitching this fabric on them, although they're static when they're not moving, when they started moving, they would create these three-dimensional sculptural pieces. And there were motion sensors that when somebody was coming close, they were starting spinning slowly and then faster and faster again. Ending and going towards the piece that we have here at the Biennial, it's an inflatable pavilion. Our obsession with inflatable started from this early project at the Brussels Design Museum, for the power of the inflatable being able to be at the same time an intriguing materiality, create space, be playful in scale, create cushiony area for sitting. For us, it kind of summarizes many of all these ideas that we want to be bringing in separate different projects, but here we can bring it all in one. This was at the Alcova fair in Milan as well, again, the Salone del Mobile. And we started having this series of installations. You saw the inflatable fountain, this one, the one we have here at the Biennale, that we have been developing. We've been keeping them with the intention to create something more out of that, because they're temporary, but they're temporary that when you put them in a different context, they can adjust to the new context and they can create a different scenario. And this is the one you can see here at the Cultural Center. Thank you so much. maybe it sounded some confusing to you, maybe it's like too many mixed things up, but this is really the way we work. We work very mixed up.
Great. We have time for a couple questions. Please raise your hand and we'll get the microphone to you. Thank you. Audrey.
I had a really practical question about one of the first installations in New York. I noticed that the hammocks were white. Did you all have a hard time with those getting dirty, and did you take them down at night?
So that was a project on for 3 months. There was security on the plaza, meaning there was a guard all the time. The hammocks were swapped. There were two series of hammocks. Every couple of days or weeks, they were being replaced, washed and replaced. It was planned. It wasn't something that came up afterwards as a mistake. It was we wanted to be white. It wasn't fabric. It was vinyl, so it was durable. But the reason why we wanted to use the hammocks is to create this feeling of a very homey element. We could easily have used like wire mesh hammocks, but we wanted this homey element in the middle of Manhattan.
Angela.
I have another technical question. How do you maintain the air pressure in the inflatables? Does it involve like noise, like blowers, or are you?
No, they're very high quality made. The seams are extremely tight, and they don't lose air for the time that are being installed. For example, the ones that we did install some inflatables at the Noguchi Museum in New York. The show was on for 1 year and a half because of COVID, and there was barely minimum air. We pump air maybe twice in a year. But this is planned from our fabricators. We don't produce this ourselves. We produce at a specialized fabricator, and it's just very high quality made.
Angela.
Hello, thank you. I really enjoyed the presentation. I just noticing and seeing all the work, you have a very distinct visual language, and I think it's a design language that has been incredibly influential. And I'm curious if you might have any insights on how that developed. What was kind of the beginning of that design language, as it kind of, in some ways, almost approaches like minimalism, but it's very contemporary and seems to be very impactful in the world.
Thank you for the question. I'm surprised. It came project by project, and honestly, when we studied architects. We studied architecture at the Polytechnic School in Greece, very kind of like narrow-minded architects, and then we moved to New York, where things are different. And we kept going back and forth. So New York really opened our mind in many different disciplines and other things. So we started seeing a lot of things. And when we started, Eleni was working in the arts. So we both studied architecture, and then Eleni was working in the art world. So she was very involved in art. We were both interested in minimal art since the early days. And then sometime we decided to we started working on these objects on our own. We were actually building some plywood tables, and it developed really organically. We didn't really know what we were doing. So project by project, we just kept doing something new. And the reason for that is because we're bored of doing the whole, many artists, many designers, they work like that. That's how their mind is set. They work in variations. We do this and this. We cannot do that because we're bored, or we just, it's not that we have too many ideas. We don't have too many ideas. We force ourselves to produce other ideas. So it's really like one thing follows the other. And then once you do many things, or you start getting an identity, but without really realizing it. Many times we have sat back and, okay, we formalized, okay, what are we doing, this, what we're doing, but then we never really stick to it. And then we have a good team, we have a big team, and myself and Eleni are the partners, and we're very different people. So Eleni works in other things, I work in other things. Sometimes I don't even know what she's working on, and I see it finalized. So it's not that we don't do all the things together, but somehow, intuitively, we flow along, and it's just built up by a lot of work and over time.
Audrey.
Hi. Because of the experimental nature of a lot of your projects and the idea that your work seems to float between art, architecture, and design, how do you fund different projects? Do you find that is a challenge, or is there something already built in, a grant system or something? I'm interested
How do we
in that.
fund? Okay.
Yeah.
It's different how we started and different how we do it now. We started, so now we're much more organized. Now most of the things, we've always done and will still do self-initiative projects that we fund, but we don't fund not in big scale. It's like ideas, but then they find a way to become a commission or to become something else. But at the same time, we work in architecture, we work in, so many different things can fund each other, okay? We don't work in with grant. We were lucky not to work with grants because we have had this different kind of like revenue incomes from different disciplines that somehow sustain a more kind of interdisciplinary practice. And then it's commissions and invitations and a very efficient team and a lot of work. Yeah. It's not that we don't want to get grants, but it's just these kind of projects are not planned. We don't really say, okay, we want to work on this project, we want to apply for a grant. They come out of opportunities and they come really out of a context.
Jayan.
Great, hi, thank you. I am here with my class, and the class just happens to be on convincing people to give you, but it's like a proposal class, basically. And so my question for you, maybe a little self-serving for my class, is what is the way that you and your partner have found that is the most effective way to communicate these bigger ideas that can only exist once they're made, right? Sort of strapping together, 40 inflatables, right? Like it's not, so is it sort of like visual tools, other tools? Like what are the ways that you guys have found that you can make something in your mind? Is it previous work, et cetera, et cetera? Like what works best in your experience to kind of convince the places that you work with to let you put your cool, weird, fun objects in their spaces?
Definitely is to, unfortunately, to finalize the idea and finalize everything before it's even a possibility to happen. So, for example, many times, many architects know how competitions work. You have to actually do the whole project and then maybe you don't win the competition. So I think this is the way we have been doing it, meaning we have an idea, we want to propose it somewhere. We will start a conversation, we will have a hint, but then we'll go and do the idea. not really in full scale, but visually, but the story, the core idea, not the details, for example. For example, now we've won a competition now in Canada to develop a sculptural element in front of a building. We have no idea how to do it, no idea at all, but we have convinced them that we know exactly how to do it. But visualization is very important, but also not just visualization for the image of it, the story of it, and what it will do, and yeah. And then of course, the more things you do, the more you can relate, okay, to this and that and other things, and then reuse of ideas. Most of the ideas don't advance. So it's not that we reuse exactly the same idea, but you still have it in the back of your mind. You have some old sketches that, okay, this comes again and again, but an idea is never lost.
Hi, what strategies do you use to invite audiences to slow down and engage with your work in a meaningful way?
Honestly, I don't know if people actually slow down, but it's a suggestion to slow down. It's a suggestion to, I mean, you'll see this installation. You will go, you'll sit, lie down and leave. You won't really slow down. But it's a proposition, and that's also why this is at the context of a biennial. A biennial is proposing ideas, and a biennial is giving ideas for the future. So this installation, particularly in others, are not the ones that will do the work, the ones that will slow you down. They are the ones that will give you the inspiration for what you will want, for what slowdowns mean to you, or for what gathering means to you. All of the things that you saw are not, they will not actually create the gathering that you do in your domestic environment, but are artistic representations of what these simple ideas can achieve if you practice them. Maybe I answered it. I don't know.
Hi, thank you. I just have this question. If there is an opportunity for you that has infinite money, resources, and time, what will you do? Like, what you will want to do?
I don't know. Very hard to say. Easily I can say the same thing, but I'm not sure if that's true. I guess what we've been doing all this time, that one thing brings the other, and then we didn't start from doing, we started from doing small, other more insignificant things, and one thing brought the other. We didn't start from a design museum, we didn't start from a design, like a museum show, but we maintain, let's say, the things that we do, we don't do it we do it because we like them, and we do it because they mean something to us. So I guess we'll continue doing that. If the resources are big, more, maybe we'll do bigger, more impressive, more fancy, I don't know, but I guess we'll find out. It's very hard to respond to that because it's a response to all the works. It's a response to a context. Sometimes the context is physical, sometimes it's in our head, and we want to put something out there and find where it's better to implement it. It definitely will make things easier.
Hi, I had a question. I wanted to know what inspires you to keep playing and keeping that like playfulness lens?
It's not the playfulness that we care about so much. It's more the purity of the ideas and how these ideas that we have, no matter how they came into us, are kind of like implemented. Many people have told me, okay, your colors are very pop or playful. Playful sometimes can be something very superficial. Okay, color is playful, bouncy is playful, but it's not that how we see play. That's why I think, still for me, the most significant project that we've done for me is this Talks Theater. That play here was the flexibility of, where was it? Anyway, you remember. Play was the idea that something is not static, that something can, but it's not flexible in terms of architectural flexibility. Okay, you have a partition, you slide it, and you can transform a room in 2 rooms. It's something deeper than this. It's, yeah, this is what we mean by play. Play many times might be an easy word if it's something is a bit more funky or a bit more, yeah. I don't know if I answered it.
Jay?
Hi, I'm curious about the realities of working so closely artistically with a partner. Do you find that after all this time, you guys are pretty aesthetically and artistically aligned? Do you ever have moments where your ideas are completely at odds with each other? And if so, how do you reconcile that? How do you work around that?
It's obviously very hard to work with a partner, and you have to know your partner very well, or you have to have very distinct boundaries, which we happen to manage to get both. Luckily, we are very aligned in anything aesthetic. We've never ever argued about anything aesthetic. And we learned over time, of course, how to respect each other's boundaries. And that came from a lot of arguing and a lot of communication. So what we have, we never disagree in aesthetics, but we disagree in execution. And like any office, any practice, it doesn't matter if it's colleagues or couples, it's you have to separate tasks and you have to identify roles and where your decision ends and other decision. And many times there are projects that I don't know what Eleni is working on, and I will not see it until the end. And it's not because she doesn't want to tell me or I don't want to tell you, it's because we don't need to. And that's how the identity have evolved, because we're 2 and plus a whole team, and it's not just one hand drawing it, it's 2 or more. But and that brings value and brings multiplicity to something that evolves. But yes, it's very hard to work with partners, but as long as you are conscious about the decisions and why you're doing it, then it's feasible.
Hi, my question is regarding error and mistakes. Considering your workflow that goes from idea to product, to production, how do you deal or how do you sell to yourself and the person who commissioned the piece like an error or a mistake in material, and how do you deal with that frustration?
Okay. Eleni doesn't care about the mistakes. I freak out with the mistakes. That's a separation of roles. Eleni looks at the big picture, and at the end, that's what counts. Because sometimes the mistakes, you are the only one who sees them, nobody else sees them. And a mistake is something very subjective, okay? There might be a mistake, okay, a piece that was commissioned to you arrived and it's broken, of course. or it's something else. If it's a practical mistake, it's an issue. If it's an aesthetic, let's say, mistake, you only know it exists. And that's how you manipulate it, because let's say, if we propose an installation like that, nobody knows what we proposed, right? Nobody knows what it is. We only know what we were supposed to make. So we're happy. We look into the big picture at the end, and we look about the outcome and not the details. This also is not the same in architecture, because then when something becomes very technical, then of course you have the technicalities. But in the big picture of this multiplicity of work, it's the big picture that we care about. And then the mistakes are in our head only.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, thank you so much. I was curious to know what your take is, especially in regards to your exhibition at the Noguchi Museum, when you have, it seems like a lot of your works you're bringing in sort of a nod to your Greek culture and your background. Do you find that when you're working in spaces where that is a totally different culture, or even needing to combine pieces together, such as with that exhibition, that it is kind of easily harmonious in sort of having that dialogue between cultures, or do you find that there are challenges that you have to navigate?
We care a lot about history and context, but context can be two things. Context is us and our background, and context is the place where we do the work. So without too much discussion and without too much, a bit unconsciously, we kind of blend them all together. We always care about the two, not equally. Sometimes, and you saw sometimes some things look like they're out of context, but they are within our context. So sometimes they blend, but it's not. We don't care more about one or the other. Sometimes we don't really realize it, that we're doing no, let me rephrase it. Yeah, this kind of context. So the two contexts we try to blend together. For the exhibition at the museum, it wasn't so that was a curation from things that we already had and things from our body of work. So that was also what we were amazed of, that the curators of the museum managed to create context out of things that we have done that had nothing to do with Noguchi, but somehow by bringing them in the museum and arranging them in all the different spaces, they start making a sense. And I think that's, of course, the magic of being a curator and not especially a curator at this kind of place. And Noguchi was one of the first multidisciplinary artists, so the museum was promoting that conversation of different cultures. Did I respond to the question? I'm not sure. Okay.
Thank you, Leonidas. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.